education, in name, has been around in Canada anyway, for about 30 years. In the world, 40 to 50 years, if you go back to the roots in Brazil and other Latin American countries. But what popular education is about is ancient. And popular education, or educación popular, is the newest term for an ancient practice of people teaching each other, learning from each other, with the kind of characteristics that we have in popular education: anti-authoritarian, resisting power, being creative, amongst other things. And how do we take popular education and apply it to levels of public policy, social movements, to politics, to electoral politics, right at this moment in time, for instance, and to planning? How do we take it to those levels?
This morning we made some maps of our educational lives in Toronto, and in my head I mapped in a very specific way, starting from my family and where I grew up and the landscape I grew up and how that shaped my educational life, and moved out. And other people had very specific maps of streets and roads around their house and buildings that they access, and libraries. I saw Miriam's map. She had the internet in there and other friends that she accesses for her educational life. It's a tool of transparency, inclusion, and empowerment for communities to map out how they live their lives in communities, and also how to become agents of change and transform the relations of power operating in their lives.
Where do we put some of these things, and who's calling them what? What we hear when we hear certain words, and how we position ourselves in relation to those words, and then what that means for the conversations that we have and the relationships that we might build.
The mapping exercise that started in the 6151 class, and so over there on the east wall are the world map and the Toronto map, with tons of examples of popular education around the world. And this event belongs on that map now as well. I believe storytelling to be, in many ways, the original form of popular education. I think it's an ancient way in which we make meaning out of experience, and we share it with each other in a communicable way that once it's a story, somebody else can tell it as well. Stories break out because they mobilize different kinds of feelings, and that can include embarrassment, and but it can also include joy and delight. And it's hard to contain that as well. Storytelling, because it is ironically ubiquitous, it's everywhere, while at the same time not being the dominant way of knowing, actually has the possibility of creating a more holistic understanding of the world. That popular education, unlike dominant education, I would argue, privileges storytelling as a means of knowing, as a means of making meaning. When we start with the experience of the learner, which is a common phrase in popular education, and it is a fundamental principle of popular education, starting with the experience of the learners, or starting with the experience of the participants, necessitates storytelling. What is that experience? How are people understanding that experience? And so it takes time to share those stories. And then we bring in logical knowledge as well. We bring in what science teaches us, we bring in the lists, we bring in the philosophy, the 2 or 3 points, and we remake our stories from individual stories to collective stories.
This is a zine, or the cover. As my interest is around collective education and using hip-hop as a tool for social change. Hip-hop stems from stories that are based around systemic realities that I feel like are being hidden in mainstream media, and comes out through hip-hop, be it graffiti, emceeing and all those things.
There are artist swap meets all over the country and all over the world. And people make these little cards here. They're all the size of a playing card. They're 2.5 by 3.5 inches, and each one is an original work of art. And you trade them. You make them to give away.
So that you're giving away something that's totally original, that hasn't been copied or photocopied.
Oh, cool!
So you can collect original works of art.
Yeah.
So you're making value, and you're getting value.
So what are people's motivations usually for doing this?
Community.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. You're not allowed to sell them.
Oh, okay.
That's the whole principle. There's a manifesto that was created about them, and the manifesto is about making them available to other people to trade. And it's a really great way. Like if you have a community group, you can actually share with other community groups. So it's a great way to create intercultural exchanges.
Yeah.
I've been really interested today to be in a room full of facilitators who are also learners, and the way that the space is being set up, it feels like everyone is coming as both, and that in the facilitation process, everyone that's there is helping define the very process itself.
So often we may educate or may connect with people in the ways that we're most comfortable and most familiar with. But I think meeting people outside our networks and outside our communities gives us the opportunity to really look at what are some other ways we can connect with communities, really try to go beyond some of our limitations.